Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where we just finished up getting our communication network in place for our bases on Moon and Minmus. And now we need to talk about what exactly it means to have a station around each of them for our definition of based. So we're going to hop into the VAB here, although first I want to head over to Mission Control. Do we have any missions that we're going to be doing soon? No. The answer is no. Okay, so we're not going to be getting to those just yet. Now, I do want our base on Moon to be focused on science. So let's head into the VAB. And what does it mean to have an orbital station around Moon for a base that is focused on science for right now? That's an interesting question because I've not seen an orbital science lab. We might just not have it unlocked yet. In which case, we'd have to do this as, like, several modules, right? So that would be reasonably fine. Let's hop into science here real quick. So this is a science junior here. That's a radial science junior. This is an atmospheric survey. And then we've got a sample grabber. Okay. So I think we should end up doing something like a lunar gateway for it. We can add a science component later on. Actually, let's hop into the R&D and see when we would end up getting that. So checking in here, we can see that there's not really all that much science in this category. There's nuclear propulsion up over here, which would be convenient later, but for the moment, we don't really need that. Xenon propulsion will be very convenient later as well. Modular launchers, indeed. So, I mean, that's all well and good, but this is not very much in terms of actually getting additional science, right? We've got the atmospheric science, we've got the autonomous sampling, and that's pretty much all there is in this tier. So that is fine. Let's hop over into the heavy rocketry tier here. And this tier is, well, let's see here. We've got radiation science, processing radiation samples. Okay. That's definitely something that we could put in an orbital science platform. But that's what we'd be looking for. That is a long ways away. Okay, that is a really long ways away in terms of science. So we would need to, bare minimum, spend $1,750 to get to heavy rocketry. Then an additional $1,400. Then an additional $1,400, then $1,800, then $2,900 science. That is on a tier that we are not ready for. So what we should do is we should put a framework up instead, and then come back to that and put a lab in once we get this. That would be the way to go. So let's hop into the VAB, and we're going to base this off of our fuel station that we previously constructed. So the fuel station core, that's this guy, and we'll load you right on in. Okay, so this is our fuel station core here. And honestly, this is basically all we need for right now. Although, we might want to put a power section in here. We do currently have these photovoltaic panels here. I'm wondering, do we have access to anything fancier? Not really at this time. Okay, I think we'll just launch this as is and call it good enough for right now. I'm a little concerned about having enough delta V to get it into position in the moon. So there's that. Or rather, around the moon. We don't want it to be in the moon. I'm wondering right now about our thrust to weight here. So our thrust to weight is 1.92. Okay. That should be reasonably okay. We'll have about 2 minutes of burn time here. I'm trying to remember just how much we had to burn out of here previously. I know that we did have to turn on our fuel crossfeed here, which is fine. But I'm just going to put this up and call this the basic framework for our station. We can put an orbital, or rather a surface module down. And that's probably going to end up being a mobile base, is my guess, for this particular one. Some others will be static, absolutely. And we're going to make every base bespoke. And every station is likely going to be bespoke. In the future, we're going to angle for having the stations be single launchable. But this one we just don't have the tech for. So for now, let's put this up over the moon. And if we have to refuel it, we can. but I don't think we'll have to. I think we'll be okay. So let's just lift this guy off. Apparently we're counting down. Let's skip the countdown, and off we go. I'm rotating us on over here. Overshot it a bit. Yeah, about here. Cool. So as before, we want to push basically straight. These SRBs are really loud. Like, incredibly loud. Okay, let's try that. Those SRBs are so loud. So that's fine. I mean, that is the way SRBs work, to be clear. I want to go relatively straight up with these SRBs for the moment. As I said last time, we don't have a fairing. So we want to push up through the atmosphere as quickly as possible here. And we're just going to ditch our SRBs here in a moment. But we need to get up into thinner atmosphere. Okay. SRBs are gone, and let's make our way down here. I don't want to go too aggressive on it just yet. Okay. This is a little floaty. And I think that is because of aerodynamic forces at this moment. But this feels controllable as long as we keep it relatively slow here. Okay. Let's burn here until this engine is burned out. I just want as much horizontal speed at this moment as we can. Our apoapsis is plenty high. We just need horizontal speed. Cool. And we need quite a lot of horizontal speed as well, but we're going to circularize once we lose this stage. Okay. Stage separation, we're clear. Engine shutdown. So at this point, I want to do an apoapsis burn in the prograde direction here, and we just want to get ourselves into an orbit. Now, we can see that this is not necessarily an ideal orbit. Okay, I'd like it to be somewhere around here. That seems reasonably fine. Yeah, it's an orbit. So that'll be okay. We'll position ourselves. And we will commence this burn in about 1 minute 44 seconds. Well, 1 minute 50, actually. I was reading the wrong thing there. Cool. So we just want to put this in an equatorial orbit around Moon, and we can decide what height we want it to be, but this is intended to be a support station for generating science. So that's fine. We just don't have the parts for it yet, so we're just putting in the core. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Excellent. So we just need to get ourselves like 800 meters per second worth. Yeah, 844 meters per second worth of delta V in mostly the horizontal direction to bring this in. To be honest, we might want to be burning pure prograde at this time rather than following this maneuver node. We're at the apoapsis right now, and we're passing the apoapsis. So, because of the lateness of the burn, that's why this is positioning up over here. I don't know why it works this way in KSP2. It's interesting. It wants you, if you want to circularize your orbit, it wants you to burn slightly before the apoapsis, which I think it has to do with the burn timer offset. If you remember in KSP1, there was an option to set the burn time offset to be 50%. As far as I know, that option doesn't exist in KSP2, but that's probably what's going on here. That option may exist somewhere, but that's almost certainly what we've got happening here. That's absolutely fine. We can work with it. It's okay. We just need to keep in mind that that's how this works. So we're reaching 2 kilometers per second right now. We still need a couple hundred more meters per second in order to enter orbit here. And this is all absolutely okay. We're going to be ditching this component once we arrive at our target position. But we can see our periapsis coming up, and at this point, this is completely fine. We are officially in orbit now. We don't need to burn the remainder of this maneuver. Cool. So now we, of course, want to make our way out to Moon. We'll set that as our target, and sometime around here or so. That's going to be after an orbit. We're going to push this out over this way. Little bit further. Yep, that gets us a moon periapsis. Okay, now we need to decide what kind of orbit we want this to be in, right? And for now, the question is, well, what altitude do we want it? Well, I think I'll put it at around 500 kilometers. So we'll just bring this in a bit. Okay, we got to change the timing, because we lost efficiency here. So timing needs to be changed, and we'll put it right about here or so. Yeah. Right about here. That'll do. Okay, so that looks good. We'll align for that burn. That will, of course, not take very long. And let's warp our way around. Oh, hang on. Before we do too much warping, we should probably extend our solar panels. That tends to help. We've got plenty of battery charge, but I don't want to warp out to the moon and then not have any battery charge when we get there. That would be problematic. So let's make sure to do that. That would be helpful. And of course, now it's super dark. Okay, sun is coming back up now. Perfect. About 20 seconds until our burn. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1, mark. So this is going to be a fairly hefty burn, bringing us out there. And as I said before, this is only a station core. We would want to probably have like a habitation module, a science module, a power module, and perhaps even a fuel module on here. That would be 4 modules, and we would still have a docking port available. Beyond whatever we decide to have, right? Because we can have a docking port on the end of each of those modules, in theory. So that would be absolutely fine, but all we're going to do for now is put up this core. This is the only station that I plan to have be constructed in orbit at this time, and it kind of makes sense for that to be the first station, I think. So that's fine. We've still got about another 40 seconds left in this burn. And this is definitely not the highest thrust to weight in the world, but it does get the job done, so that seems good. And at this point, we definitely can ditch our engine system, which we will be planning on doing, most likely. Unless we want to just call that our power module. That's a theoretical possibility, actually. I don't hate that idea. We might call it that, and just retain it. That way we don't need a power module. Yeah, we don't even have access to Gigantors, so I feel like that works. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Going a little further here. There. Close enough. That'll do. So next up, we need to warp to about here. So up we go. Fantastic. We now need to get ourselves into the sphere of influence of the moon. There we go. So now I want to, at this periapsis, circularize us. Fantastic. Something along the lines of this would do. It's probably not perfect. Definitely not perfect. It doesn't necessarily need to be perfect, though. Probably a little early, I think, is where we want it. Yeah. Slightly like that. That's too much. If only we could adjust the offset. Maybe like there? That's a little better. It's good enough. It is good enough. It does not have to be perfect. it'll get bumped around later on anyway. So that seems fine. We'll align to the maneuver node. This reaction wheel is really strong, for the record. Like, incredibly strong. Okay, let's warp on down. That burn will be in about 40 minutes, 20 minutes, and 40 seconds. 30 seconds, 20, 10, and 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Cool. Let's bring down that orbital velocity. We've got lots of delta V left over. And the question is, are we going to do our bases in a single launch? Well, probably not. Not in all cases, anyway. Some cases might be single launch, like, for example, a unmanned science base for Moho. That would probably be a single launch base. I do plan on having... I kind of like the idea of having a submarine base for Eve and for Lathe. I think those are interesting concepts for sure. And then beyond that, I haven't gotten too many ideas yet for how we're going to do these. A lot of them are probably going to end up being either science or fuel bases. So around Gilly, we would have a fuel base for sure. Or rather, on Gilly, we would have a fuel system. Probably similarly with Ike, we would just have one fuel base on the lowest gravity body in any planetary system. Is probably how that would work. With the possible exception of things like Dress, which do not have a planetary, another planetary body other than Dress, and Dress itself is fairly high gravity. So we'd probably avoid that and just use the one at Ike. Would probably be what ended up happening there. Now, we might have an orbital lab around Kerbal as well. That would be, like, within the Moho orbit, but I'm not sure how close we could get without it burning up. We would need some sort of heat control for that. We'll do that after Moho, almost certainly. But here we are with our gateway over the moon, and that will be absolutely fine for right now. We need to start thinking about what our base would look like, but I want to do the Minmus base first. I think. Well, actually, what I want to do is I want to go to Duna. I think that's the way to go right now. So let's head back to the VAB. And for heading back to Duna, or rather, not back to Duna, for heading to Duna, we need to get there and we need to get back. That's pretty intense as far as fuel goes. No doubt about that. So what I'm thinking is we have some sort of a rendezvous system here. Is what I'm thinking right now. We're going to need to, over Duna, do a hybridized... I'm just thinking here about how we want to do this. We're going to have to do a somewhat precision landing on Duna. Specifically because we want to land near the monument. Where is the monument on Duna? We should figure that out now, before we do too much planning here. This is mission control. We're going to need to go to the tracking station. So let's go to the tracking station here. Let's go over to Duna. And the reason I want to do this right now, rather than continuing to work on our base setup, is because we simply lack the science. So let's hop over to Duna. This mission alone, okay, that's relatively high latitude. This mission alone is going to be worth a lot of science. Thousands of it. Because we know if we go into mission control that just doing Duna Monument here is worth 2,000. And we're going to escape Kerbal as well, which will be another 50, which isn't a whole lot. We could actually launch a vehicle, though, and get this completed. Have it be a bit of a rover. And if we happen to land not super near it, but reasonably near it, then we can just drive. In theory. That's an option. Is it a good option? Maybe. So what would that end up looking like? Well, we don't have a lot of command and control pods at this moment. We've got, like, the Mark II tuna can. And that's not ideal for a rover, necessarily. We could definitely make it be a rover. We could attach, like, the rove mate on here. But what do we have for structural? We actually have the external command seat here. We could have a separate rover to our lander. I don't think we want to do that at this moment. So let's look at our structural components that we have available right now. We've got access to I-beams. We've got access to structural panels. So I'm looking at these medium-sized structural panels in terms of size right now. Okay. We've got these hubs, and we've got trusses. We've got tubes. And those are all pretty small. Noted. We don't have access to nuclear propulsion yet. So, we should probably include, as far as science goes, we should include an air sniffer. That is hilariously small. Okay, so that is on there. That is definitely something that should be included. The surface grabber, I'm wondering if this works like the one in KSP1, where we have to find a particular location. No, I think it's just a surface survey. This is an environment survey. This is an atmosphere survey. Okay, noted. So, some hypothetical components here. We're going to need a lot to get this done. We don't have access to any sort of ISRU. So that's noted. I would definitely like to have some parachutes on this. And we have 2 seats here, so that means we can repack our parachute. That is useful. No doubt about that. That is very, very useful. What about lifting off on Duna? Because I want this to return home. No doubt about that. I want to land there. I want to get the science from that location and return home. We can also do science missions to Minmus if we feel like it's necessary. I would definitely like to have some more science from that, but I want to go to Duna for right now. And the question is... Okay, these are radial mount drogue chutes. So a pair of radial mount drogue chutes combined together, maybe about here, with a pair of radial mount chutes. So that would be something like that. As far as being able to land on Duna goes, this might not be enough. We might need to do a powered landing, which is acceptable. Now, this is, of course, really dumb looking, but that's definitely a thing. So I want to take a quick peek here. We definitely want to have a heat shield on this. And I'm thinking about how we would want to do this. We're going to need a disposable heat shield. So this would be a return to Kerbal heat shield, right? And then these components would probably be attached separately to other things. This would be our return to Kerbal heat shield, and we would need to have a decoupler here. So that would be a TD25 decoupler. Then we would have here a fuel tank. I think we're not going to have a heat shield for descending on Kerbal, or on Duna. So something kind of like this. This would be an X232. Now, here's a question. If we were to quad couple, what would this end up looking like for thrust to weight? What kind of an engine would we need to have on this thing, right? It would need to be a pretty hefty engine, most likely, if we were to do something kind of like this. So the idea here would be that we would land like this, ideally with this nearly full. That would be the ideal scenario. We'll run a fuel line like this, and then let's put in, and this is going to probably be hilariously low thrust to weight. Let's put in a poodle, and let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So, I want this celestial body to be Duna. 0.76 in vacuum. In atmosphere, it doesn't actually change. Interesting. The thrust to weight remains the same. So obviously, this engine is too weak, right? No doubt about that. So let's take a look at specific impulses here. This is 282 in atmosphere, 265 in atmosphere. So the skipper would be probably the better option here. So it would be something kind of like that. So that's 2.1 over Duna. That's definitely high enough. Okay. So the other question is, how do we want to go about doing our actual landing on Duna, right? Because we are going to need a number of things. Specifically, we're going to need the ability to land in a reasonably targeted manner in an atmosphere. So that'll be a little complicated. We are going to move these guys down a bit because of the size of this engine. I'm also going to move these guys down a bit. And then I'm going to move the actual decoupler as well. And we'll have it be something a bit more like this. Then we're going to need landing struts on here, and they'll need to be fairly large landing struts. The LT1s are the best we've got, and that'll have to do for now. So something along the lines of this. We are going to utilize our chutes, and this guy here, I don't know if it actually has to connect to anything. I don't think it does. So I'm thinking about having this be in some sort of a service bay that we would bring back. Do we have a service bay? We've got fairings, and we've got this short cargo bay, and this long cargo bay. But that's obviously not really what we want. Okay, so we don't really have service bays the way that we want them just yet. That is noted. That is absolutely fine. So we've got a Methalox adapter here, which is certainly interesting. We can put that there like this. This is still way too large. So that is fine. This is a small to medium adapter. We need that to be an extra small adapter, but it's okay. So we can see here that this is already, you know, mildly awkward. We're definitely going to want to bring a Science Junior, so I'm going to put that up top here. Okay, and then as far as landing these go, we probably want some additional mass here. I'm also wondering what the overall weight of this is. 106 tons. This is actually like half of the mass of what we need for that mission, but sure. So I'm going to put on some additional legs here because this is a lot of weight. And we'll do something about like that. Okay, so we'll unextend these legs, but we're going to have to do this individually for each of these for now. Okay, so this is going to be a whole thing. A whole thing, no doubt about that. For now, it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we are going to continue work on this. We're going to need to think about a few things, including adding struts here, which I'm actually going to do right now. I'm going to add a strut here. I'm going to strut these together like so, and I'm going to strut this from here to here as well. So that should be reasonably solid. Maybe we should strut them up top as well, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so we're going to need to think about how we're going to transfer to Duna and do our orbital maneuvers there, because we're going to need to do some inclination changes and the like. It's going to be pretty fuel intensive. We'll see how that goes. For now, it's time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we are finishing up this design. I'm going to call this the Duna Lander with the vehicle name Lander. Okay, there we go. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.